The storm begins. The wind howled across the icy plains of Varela 9. Snow and ash mixed in the air, making it hard to see more than a few steps ahead. The camp had been quiet just hours ago, but now it was chaos. Tents ripped apart and machines struggled to hold their ground against the violent weather. Inside a small survival tent at the edge of the ravine, Jack, a human scout, tightened the seals on the fabric walls. His mission had been to chart the valley's terrain, but now, trapped in a deadly blizzard, survival came first. He checked the generator and heater. The warmth inside the tent was barely enough, but better than what waited outside. Jack sat down and removed his frozen gloves, rubbing his hands together. Suddenly, his communicator beeped. A weak signal blinked on the screen. Someone was out there. He narrowed his eyes. The signal was local, barely 30 meters away. Faint, flickering. No response on voice. Who would be out in this storm? Jack muttered dot. He opened the tent flap a crack and was immediately blasted by icy wind. He could just make out a figure crawling through the snow, a small shape, clutching something to her chest. It wasn't a human. Her skin was pale blue, and her body shook violently. Without hesitation, Jack pulled her in and zipped the tent shut behind her. She collapsed just inside, gasping for breath. Her body was thin, bones almost showing through her strange clothing. Her large eyes blinked slowly. Unfocused Jack dropped to one knee and helped her out of her snow-covered cloak. "You're freezing. Sit near the heater." She didn't respond. Her lips were almost blue. She looked more like a lost child than a threat. Jack grabbed one of the thermal blankets and wrapped it around her. He reached into the supplies and pulled out a water pack and emergency food tube. "Here, eat something, slowly." The girl stared at the items like they were alien, which they were. To her, Jack kept his voice calm. "You understand me?" She hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. Her fingers curled slowly around the water pouch. Jack leaned back, heaving her space. His thoughts raced. An alien girl alone, outside, on a planet where she clearly didn't belong. Who was she? Where was her team? Why hadn't they responded to the emergency beacon? He tried again. "Do you have a name?" She looked up. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, shaped oddly by an unfamiliar accent. "Leary." Jack nodded. "I'm Jack. You're safe here, Leary. Just rest." The heater whirred steadily, pushing warm air into the tiny tent. Leary's trembling slowed. She pulled the blanket tighter and gave Jack a cautious look, half fear, half something else. Trust? Jack didn't push. He knew fear, and he knew the galaxy didn't treat strangers kindly. Outside, the storm raged louder, slamming snow against the tent walls. Jack added another power cell to the heater and handed Leary a second blanket. She took it with quiet gratitude. They sat in silence for a while, both listening to the wind. And then she spoke, surprising him. "You helped me." "Why?" Jack blinked. "Because you needed it." Her eyes softened. "Even though I'm not." "Like you?" Jack shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You're cold. I had heat." Leary stared at the heater as if seeing it for the first time. She whispered something in her own language, something Jack didn't understand, but it sounded like thanks. As the hours passed, Leary leaned back against the tent wall and finally closed her eyes. Jack watched her for a moment, then looked down at his tracker. Still no signal from her people. No patrols. No response. Something wasn't right. He didn't know it yet, but letting her in was not just an act of kindness. It was the start of something much bigger. Something that would change both of them and maybe the galaxy itself. Asterisk secrets in the snow. Jack barely slept. The storm outside hadn't eased. The wind screamed like a wounded animal, shaking the tent every few minutes. But it wasn't the noise that kept Jack awake. It was the questions about the girl, her people, and what she was doing alone out there. Leary slept lightly, curled, near the heater with both blankets wrapped tightly around her. Her breathing was slower now, but uneven. Jack could see she was still cold, even with all the warmth he could offer Dot as morning broke, if you could call the dim gray light morning. Jack carefully stepped outside. His boots crunched over frozen snow. The camp around him was still half buried. A few Combs towers had snapped under the wind's force, and the signal relay he had used last night was completely fried. He tried again to send a message to the human base across the ridge. No answer. Then he opened a private frequency and recorded a voice log. "This is Scout Jack Morgan, Unit 8. I found someone. Non-human female, possible minor. Identity unknown. She's injured, maybe lost. No visible weapons. I'm keeping her safe for now. I'll check the valley for signs of a crash or camp when the weather clears." He closed the log and looked around. Still no tracks. No sign of where she came from. Back inside the tent, Leary was awake. Her eyes followed him cautiously as he unzipped the flap and entered. He knelt beside the heater and warmed his gloves again. She didn't speak. Jack decided to take the first step. "I couldn't raise your people on any frequency. Are you from a ship? A settlement?" Leary sat up slowly, her voice hoarse. "There. Gone." Jack frowned. "Gone where?" She looked away. Her hands trembled, not from cold now, but something deeper. "Gone," she whispered. "All of them." Jack's breath caught. "All?" She nodded. "Our scout ship was hit. We crashed in the valley 2 nights ago. Only a few of us made it to shelter. But something found us in the night." Jack felt a cold deeper than the wind run down his spine. What kind of something? Leary didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, "It wore our skin. It took their voices." Jack didn't like the sound of that. Not one bit. "You're saying something killed your crew and copied them?" She nodded again. Jack rubbed his face. "And you were the only one who escaped?" "I ran. I hid. Then I saw your beacon." Jack stood and moved to his gear bag. He retrieved a small scanner and brought it close to Leary. She flinched slightly, just scanning for infection. "In case you were injured in the crash." She allowed it. The scanner beeped and whirred. Jack glanced at the screen. No signs of wounds or foreign biologicals. But her nervousness spoke louder than the scanner. He sighed and sat back down. "Well, you're safe here. Whatever's out there, we'll deal with it." "We?" Leary asked, her voice small. Jack looked at her and gave a small nod. "Yeah, we." Something in her eyes flickered shock. Hope? It was hard to tell Dot then. Without warning, the tent lights dimmed. The heater sputtered. Jack reached for the power cell panel. "Damn, we're draining too fast." Leary suddenly tensed. "No, not power." Jack looked at her. "What then?" She pointed at the tent wall. Dot silenced Dot, at a soft scratching. Not wind, not snow. Dot, something was outside. Jack slowly reached for his rifle. He moved to the flap quietly and lifted it just a crack. Nothing. Then a face. Not human, not hers. Just inches away, watching. Jack's blood ran cold. He dropped the flap. Leary whispered, "It followed me." Asterisk the thing outside Jack kept his hand tight on the rifle. The tent was dead silent now, except for the soft hiss of the heater and the slow breathing of Leary. But both of them stared at the flap. Neither moved. "It followed me," she repeated. Even quieter than before. Jack swallowed hard. "What is it?" Leary shook her head. "I don't know. It's not alive, but not machine either. It learns fast." Jack glanced at his rifle's charge level. 70%. Not much, but better than nothing. He reached for a motion sensor from his belt and carefully slid it just beneath the tent flap. The screen blinked once. Then again, movement, circling. 2 meters out, Jack whispered. It's moving around us. Leary tensed under the blankets. It watches first, then it copies. Then it tries to speak, but the voice it uses is broken. Jack took a slow breath. You've seen this before? Leary nodded. It used my commander's voice, but it got the words wrong. It smiled when it shouldn't have. Jack cursed under his breath. He leaned closer to the flap again and peeked. Still nothing but snow swirling outside. Then a whisper. Jack. He froze. At voice dot, it was his own voice. Jack, it said again. Help me. Leary sat bolt upright, clutching the blanket. Don't answer it. I wasn't planning to. The voice repeated, louder now. Jack, she is lying. He looked at Leary. How does it know my name? It heard you speak, she replied. Once is all it needs. Jack backed away from the flap. It's mimicking me now. The heater flickered again. Jack switched to backup power. No way. He was letting it get cold again. Then they heard scratching again, this time on the rear wall of the tent. Leary whispered, It doesn't always knock. Sometimes it comes through. Jack grabbed a flare from his pack, yanked open the rear tent flap, and launched the flare into the whiteout. A red burst lit up the snow, but nothing was there, or so it seemed. For a second, just one brief second, he saw it, a shape, tall and thin. Its body rippled like liquid, shifting forms. Faces, arms, uniforms all flickering across. Its skin like a broken display dot, then it vanished into the storm again. Jack sealed the flap and turned back to Leary. We're moving. Where? She asked. There's a forward shelter 5 clicks northeast. Reinforced walls, full combs, and heavy weapons. If we can reach it. The tent shook violently. A long ripping sound echoed as one corner collapsed. It's here. Leary screamed. Jack grabbed her wrist. Go now. They burst out into the storm, snow blasting into their faces. Jack held her close as the cold bit hard. He turned on his wrist compass and followed the blinking line toward the northeast. Behind them, something screeched. Not a beast. Not a voice. Something that had no right to be walking. Leary stumbled, but Jack kept her upright. Don't look back. They ran through snow, wind, and ice. The cold cut into them, but the thing behind them was worse dot then. Through the blizzard, Jack saw lights faint and orange dot the shelter. We're close, he shouted dot, but the storm roared louder. And so did the thing following them. Leary looked. Up, face pale. If it gets in there with us, we die. Jack didn't answer. He had no plan dot, just a rifle, a flare gun, and one last idea. Asterisk into the Firejack's boots hit the metal steps of the outpost's main hatch as the wind shrieked behind. Them. The structure was half buried in snow, but the lights glowed faintly, a sign that backup power still ran. He slammed his palm against the control panel. Come on, come on. The panel blinked red dot, access denied. Jack gritted his teeth. Old. Code's not working. The screech came again closer. Leary clung to him, teeth chattering. It's coming. Jack yanked the cable from his belt and plugged it into the panel. His wrist console flickered to life. Manual override. Burn the lock. A countdown appeared. Bypass in 12, 11, 10. He pulled Leary behind him, rifle raised. If it shows up, aim for the center. Don't think. Just shoot. I don't have a weapon, she said, voice shaking. He didn't hesitate. He handed her his sidearm. Now you do. 3, 2, 1. The door slid open with a hiss. Dove inside. Jack slammed the lock again and overrode the seal, reinforcing it with the emergency blast door. Silence. Heavy. Cold. Only. The hum of the backup generator echoed through the metal corridors. They were inside. Jack collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. Leary sank to her knees, hugging the sidearm like it was her last friend in the world. Jack stood slowly and helped her up. We've got maybe 2 hours before this place runs out of heat. No fuel left. Then what do we do? She asked, eyes wide. We make a plan. First, we get to the control room. If I can boost the comms tower, we can send a signal to the main base. Leary nodded, holding her blanket tighter. It can't follow us in here, right? Jack didn't answer right away. Then he said, metal walls won't stop it forever. We need to move fast. They walked carefully through the narrow corridors. The place looked like it hadn't been used in years. Dust covered the floor, and half the lights flickered or stayed dead. In the control room, Jack activated the systems. The main screen lit up, revealing the frozen valley outside through exterior. Cams. He tapped on the distress beacon and input coordinates. Signal boosting. Transmission sending. Message sent, he said, half relieved. Now we hope someone's listening. But then Leary pointed at one of the screens. Look. Jack turned. One of the cameras showed the snow outside, moving. Something slithered under it. A long, shifting mass. Not quite solid. Not quite liquid. And it was heading for the shelter. Already? Jack said. He reached for the main turret controls, but the external weapons were long dead. Frozen over. Powerless. And came the whisper from the speaker system. Let me in. Jack. Leary backed away from the console. How is it in the system? Jack started shutting down external links. It's copying signal patterns. Trying to mimic voice. Trying to fool us. More whispers filled the speakers. You left me in the snow. I'm cold too. She's not what she seems. Jack cut the power. Silence again. Leary stared at him, her eyes damp. It's trying to turn us against each other. He looked at her, steady and calm. Then we don't let it. The building creaked. Something slammed against the outer hatch. The lights flickered. It was here. And it wanted in. Jack stood, checked his rifle charge 50% now. Then he turned to Leary. If I can overload the generator, we can use the explosion as a last resort. It won't survive a full core burst, but we might not either. She whispered. Jack gave a small, tired smile. Yeah, that's the tricky part. Asterisk. Beneath the surface, the shelter's metal walls groaned again. Jack paced near the generator room, rifle in hand, eyes locked on the door, as though staring it down might slow the thing outside. The emergency lights flickered above them, casting long shadows over the hallway. Leary stayed close. Her skin looked a little less pale now, but her eyes were full of fear. She hadn't let go of the sidearm Jack had given her. Can't believe this thing is trying to crawl into our minds, Jack muttered. It's not just a shapeshifter. It's something worse. It doesn't just copy, Leary said quietly. It learns. It improves. That's what happened to my people. Jack stopped and looked at her. How many were there? 11? Including me. Jack frowned. And now you're the last? Leary looked down. I wasn't the strongest, or the smartest, but I ran. I didn't look back. He nodded slowly. Sometimes survival is the bravest thing anyone can do. She met his eyes. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Jack glanced toward the trembling door. Because the galaxy needs more people helping first and asking questions later. Before she could respond, the power blinked again. The floor buzzed beneath their feet. The emergency screen on the wall showed an alert. Pressure drop detected, Sector 3. Jack's heart jumped. It's trying to get in from the vent systems. He pulled Leary toward the maintenance access tunnel. We have to get to the generator. Now. They ran through the narrow passage. The air smelled like rust and cold wires. Jack led her to the core chamber, where a soft blue glow lit the room from a pulsating power crystal human tech. Old and unstable, but powerful enough to cook anything that got too close. Jack opened the side panel and began typing in manual. Commands. I can build an overload sequence. We bait it inside, trap it near the core, and fry it with a forced pulse. Leary stepped beside him. That could kill us too. Only if we're still here when the pulse hits. She looked at the sidearm in her hand. Maybe I should be the bait. Jack snapped his head up. What? It came for me? It might. Follow if I leave the room. You can trigger the burst after I lure it into the hallway. No way, Jack said firmly. That thing kills, Leary. It doesn't leave survivors. Leary's eyes softened. Neither do humans. Isn't that what they say about you? Jack gave a faint smile. Yeah, well, this human's not letting you die tonight. The chamber lights suddenly turned red. Another alarm blared. Seal breach. In vent shaft. 4. Intruder detected. They looked up and heard the hissing of something slithering through metal.L. I stepped back. Jack aimed his rifle upward. Then they heard it speak again, this time through the shelter's own intercom. She. Lead. I didn't kill them. She did. Jack gritted his teeth. It's stalling. Leary's voice was calm, but shaking. It's trying to divide us again. Not working. They moved to the corridor near the core. Jack opened a nearby storage locker and pulled out 2 thermal shields and 1 emergency drone. I'll use the drone to bait it. If it follows, I'll lead it toward the chamber. You stay behind me. Leary nodded. Jack activated the drone and set it to mimic a warm-blooded target. It took off into the corridor with a loud hum. Moments later, they heard movement. Something stepped into view. It wasn't running. It was walking. Wearing Jack's face. Exactly. Same eyes. Same suit. Same scar on his brow. It smiled. Leary. Help. Me. It said. She raised her weapon. Jack stood beside her. Your smile's wrong. Leary whispered. The thing hissed, voice breaking into static. Then it ran. Straight toward them. Jack shouted, now. He and Leary spun and sprinted toward the core room, luring the creature in, just as planned. Behind them, metal tore and walls shook. The real trap had just begun. Asterisk, the trap springs, the hallway echoed with heavy, inhuman footsteps. Jack and Leary dashed through the narrow corridor, breath fogging as they ran toward the core room. Behind them, the mimic chased with unnatural speed, its limbs twitching and adjusting flesh, turning to metal and back again, as if its form couldn't make up its mind. Jack skidded into the core room and slammed the heavy blast door behind them. Seal engaged, he panted. Leary stood beside the glowing energy chamber, eyes fixed on the entrance. Will the core pulse stop it? She asked, voice tight. Jack didn't answer immediately. He knelt beside the control panel and keyed in the final override code. The crystal at the center of the generator began to glow brighter. If it gets close enough when this thing fires, Jack said, it won't survive? Nothing will. But we won't either, Leary said. Jack looked up. We don't have to be here when it goes off. We trigger it remotely. The drone I released, it's wired to feed location data. Once the mimic steps into the generator's blast radius, I'll detonate it. Outside the blast door, the creature's voice returned, this time cracking with static. You've seen what I am? And still you protect her? Jack didn't. Speak. She is not your kind. She is not even honest with you. Jack's jaw clenched. Neither are you. The mimic struck the door hard. Metal groaned. It struck again. A long, black claw pushed through the edge of the seal, twisting metal like foil. Leary raised her weapon. It's coming. Jack looked at his screen. The drone was still feeding live data. It had just passed the threshold into the corridor tracking heat. The mimic was following it. Jack pressed a command. Divert drone into the generator room. Let's make this thing chase a ghost. The drone beeped, blinked, and zipped away down the hall. Silence. Then the creature's footsteps followed. Jack watched the screen closely. It's tracking the drone. It thinks it's us. On the screen, the mimic stepped inside the core chamber. Jack gripped the trigger control. 3. Leary stood behind him, staring at the live feed. Her face showed fear. And something else. 2. The mimic tilted its head, still wearing Jack's face, distorted and twisted. 1. Jack pressed the detonator. A pulse of pure energy burst from the core chamber on the screen. The mimic's body flared with light and was thrown against the wall. The walls shook violently. Then the signal died. Inside the shelter, everything went black. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence and the smell of burning circuits. Emergency lights blinked back on. Jack exhaled. It worked. Leary stared at the blank monitor, then back at Jack. You stopped it. Jack gave a weak smile. No, we did. They left the core room slowly. Smoke filled the hall, and sparks crackled from overloaded panels. The mimic's body was gone. Nothing left but melted metal and strange black ash. Jack bent down and touched the ground near the ash. Looks like it couldn't hold itself together under that kind of energy. Leary knelt beside him. I thought I was going to die. Jack looked at her gently. You almost did. They stood together in the broken silence of the hallway. But before they could say anything else, the long-range transmitter near the coms station crackled to life. Scout Unit 8, this is Base Command. We received your signal. Are you reading us? Jack grabbed the mic. This is Scout Jack. Unalive. We have one alien survivor. Shelter breached by unknown hostile. Threat neutralized. Requesting evac and quarantine. Copy that, Scout. Evac on the way. Hold tight. Jack dropped the mic and turned to Leary. It's over. She nodded. But then she said quietly, not completely. Jack narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? She looked away, hesitant. I didn't tell you everything. Asterisk, the truth she carried. Jack stared at Leary as her words echoed in the damaged shelter. I didn't tell you everything. His rifle lowered slightly, but his body remained tense. What do you mean? Leary took a step away, holding her arms tightly across her chest. The thing that hunted us. The one you destroyed. It wasn't the only one. Jack felt the cold settle in, again worse than the wind outside. How many more? He asked carefully. Leary shook her head. I don't know. Maybe dozens, maybe more. It was a scout like me. Only it wasn't supposed to copy us. Jack frowned. What was it supposed to do? Leary looked ashamed. We created them. My people. They were designed to gather data, disguise, infiltrate. They weren't weapons at first. But someone changed them, made them want more, made them evolve. Jack exhaled slowly. And now they're out. She nodded. They escaped the research ship, took over systems, spread. The one you killed followed us when our ship crashed. I thought it was alone. I wanted to believe that. Jack paced the floor, thinking. So when I took you in, I was sheltering the last hope of stopping a bigger problem. You were sheltering the only one who wanted to stop it, she said softly. Outside, the wind began to die down. The storm was clearing, just as the sun broke through the thick clouds. The ice shimmered silver in the pale morning light. Inside, Jack walked to the com panel. We'll tell them. Everything Leary blinked. You believe me? I've seen what that thing did. That was no lie. I don't know your people. I don't know your world. But I know what I saw. And if more of those things are out there, he looked her in the eyes, then I'll fight beside anyone who wants to stop them. Her lip trembled. Even me? Jack gave a tired smile. You're not a monster, Leary. You're scared. But you're still here. You didn't run this. Time. She slowly walked forward and placed the sidearm back in his hand. Thank you. The shelter shook again, just slightly. Jack spun, raising the weapon, but it wasn't another mimic dot outside the cracked window. A silhouette hovered dark and wide. A Terran evac ship. Command had arrived. The doors hissed as a team of armored Marines entered, weapons raised. Jack raised both hands. Stand down. I'm Scout Jack. This one's with me. They scanned. Leary. The lead Marine hesitated, then gave a nod. Command says you're clear. Med team is prepped. As they led them both out into the snow, Leary whispered, What happens now? Jack looked up at the hovering ship, then at the stars beyond. Now, we tell the truth, and we prepare. She looked up too. They won't believe me. Jack's reply was quiet, strong. They'll believe us. The ship lifted into the air, rising toward orbit. Below them, the mimic's ashes scattered in the wind, and somewhere beyond the stars. Others had already started watching.